Y'all, any one of you who has been on my channel for more than maybe 30 seconds would realize extremely quickly that I love Marvel. I am a huge Marvel fan, and I unabashedly love pretty much everything they put out, or I at least love the general concept of the MCU so much that the things that I don't like about it Eternals are mainly because I think they are an attack on what the MCU, or at least in my opinion, it should be, or it's not living up to a quality standard. However, for some time now, I've sort of teased some of my unpopular MCU opinions, or things that I don't love absolutely and wholeheartedly, and then today I figured, why not share them with you? For anyone that might be concerned, a quick little disclaimer, this is honestly stemming from a part of me that is rewatching the MCU in timeline order for the first time, who just finished season 2 of Daredevil, who's starting Jessica Jones, so I am deeper into my love for Marvel than I ever have been. It's just that I'm realizing, like, I don't know, I kind of want to talk some crap, and I figured we should all do that together. Numero uno. I don't really like that much the cosmic and magic side of the MCU. Like, by far, I have always been a ground level MCU person. And now I think there's even varying degrees to ground level. Like, obviously, I think Daredevil has a much different tone than, or any of the other Defenders, than, say, even like the original Iron Man. But I am kind of a purist, or kind of like someone who has been around the MCU since like at least Avengers came out. And so that kind of like mixing of, you know, a little bit more supernatural powers with science and just things happening on Earth, that is the part of the MCU that I like the most. And so, honestly, my least favorite is space. Like, as much as I think Guardians is such a great thing in the MCU for so many reasons, and I do enjoy Captain Marvel, I guess that in and of itself is an unpopular opinion, but we'll dive into that one later. When we go to space, I'm just like, I'm not connected. Space is limitless. There are all these planets. They can just create something new, and I know that there are roots in the comics, and I know that there are places they're supposed to visit or be from, but I just can't connect to it as much. Like, I just really can't. And then the magic just feels like it's a cheap shot. Like, I really do enjoy Doctor Strange. I just rewatched Spider-Man No Way Home, and I love the magical element, but I love even more that Peter Parker is able to beat him with math, and like magic isn't all powerful. But I just feel like when you talk about space, or you talk about like the demigods of Asgard, and you talk about, I don't know, even to some degree maybe Moon Knight and like all of these like other mythical categories or parts of the MCU, it just, it to me, it doesn't have boundaries, and I don't like that, because then I feel like they're always gonna win. Whereas like, if Tony Stark is getting beaten to a pulp, yeah, he's Iron Man, I know he's probably gonna live for the time being, but I just don't like it as much. Okay, that's just, it's not that I don't officially 100% not like that side of the MCU, but like, I just like my more grounded stuff, okay? Moving forward, Thor: The Dark World is not the worst MCU movie. I think it is popular to hate that movie, just as it is popular to like Ragnarok, which I agree. I think Ragnarok is a brilliant film. I think anything Taika Waititi pretty much touches turns to literal gold, but I think both of those movies, it's become popular, and partly because the character of Thor went from being kind of a meh character to like a lot of people's favorite character in this comedic role that like it never seemed that it was intended to be in the beginning. And so I get that that's why Thor: The Dark World gets hate, because Thor is a pretty standard movie. Thor: The Dark World goes into a lot more Shakespearean / Lord of the Rings / Dungeons and Dragons type level of fantasy, but like, I really don't think it's as bad as everyone says. I think a lot of the storylines in that movie are very important, such as Loki and Thor's tie to their mother, who dies in that film, which is a huge point in Avengers Endgame, as well as the introduction of the fake Marvel fan, you can't remember what it is, of the ether, is an Infinity Stone. So I think that is where the movie gets too much hate, because it's popular to hate it, and it's like it's like haha, it's at the bottom. I really don't think it's the worst. I just really don't. I hate, and this is not really the MCU's fault, maybe it sort of is, but I hate the statement that the MCU has no stakes because people don't stay dead, okay? But like, the MCU is not the only facet of the MCU or shows or superhero stuff where dead people don't stay dead. Like, that's kind of the whole point of the superhero thing, is it's like they're kind of indestructible, so sometimes you have to beat people like more than once. I get it. Sometimes it's annoying. Sometimes it's used as a, cliffhanger ending and then is really quickly undone to get your attention. And a lot of the times it happens in other properties or materials, i.e. Star Wars, with Palpatine. People don't like it. But my point is just that I don't think that death and a character staying dead is the only reason that it has stakes. And the main reason I feel this way and this strongly about this topic is because people say it all the time. It is so annoying. They're just like, the MCU has no stakes, and everyone lives. People don't. And then the thing that bothers me is like death is not the only signifier of stakes. Like a character dies. Now, I do understand if you're trying to say that the whole world is at stake and the only people that die are conveniently just like random townspeople who like we never know or see on screen. But I think that there is stakes. Some people do stay dead. And the other thing is that like in a transmedia enterprise, which is what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is, where like you have little gaps of knowledge and then they're going to create a movie to fill that gap, or they're going to create a TV show to fill that gap, or to explain something, they'll make a new storyline in a different format of it. You cannot expect this stuff not to happen. And I understand that people would then say, well, then it's coming from a business perspective as opposed to a narrative perspective, and that causes them to be unoriginal and just create the same content. But like, guys, these are all based on comics. Like, none of it's really original in the purest sense of what original would mean. So anyways, that's just a little frustration that I have, more so with MCU fans than with anything else. This one is likely my most unpopular opinion in here. I think Multiverse of Madness is going to be a mess. Like, I'm really actually scared that it's going to be a mess. And I say this in a way that, like, I'm excited for the film. I am very much looking forward to it. I will be there the night it releases. Like, I'm so excited. But I'm really scared that it's going to be messy. There are so many elements that this movie is bringing in. Off like, one hand. America Chavez, Doctor Strange, multiple versions of Doctor Strange, which I'm going to count as another thing. So we're talking about multiverse, of course. Then we have Wanda. We have the Illuminati Council thing situation. Included in that, we have Professor X returning. We have potentially Monica Rambeau or Tony Stark or Kang or something relating to all of those things. That was not really a good way to explain that, but there's a lot of elements here. I just think some things are going to get so messy and out of control. Again, this is an unpopular opinion, and it's going to have people in the comments pointing me out as a hypocrite, but like the MCU is almost getting too big, and maybe this is like a unpopular opinion. I will continue to watch MCU stuff till the day I die. But I feel like there's a lot of cases where it's getting too big, and Disney is obviously, because this is one of their larger IP things, they're just acquiring so much from other companies. X-Men, Deadpool, the Netflix Defenders series, and then adding people on top of that, and then with Disney Plus creating spin-off shows of characters that only exist in shows that are already spin-offs of movies. Like, I just feel like everything is expanding so much to the point where like stuff is sort of getting nonsensical and hard to get excited about because it's so big. And a perfect example is I was scared that Spider-Man was going to be too messy, and it was perfect. It was perfect. And so I'm just scared that it's going to feel disconnected from the rest of the MCU because they're going to be trying to do so much that it's going to be disjointed, that the story arc won't be well, that the villain will be like not interesting at all because it will be like one Doctor Strange version, one Wanda version, and some Illuminati force. Like, all of them are going to be the bad guy. And I miss the days when Tony Stark would fight one person, the head of his company, and that was it. Or like Captain America took on Red Skull. And I get it, those are like origin solo movies, not team up, pre-Avengers, literally beginning of the MCU. And I get that. And that's where I just have to do my timeline rewatch in order and appreciate it for what it was, and also appreciate it for what it is now, because like there are things that would never be possible, like Yelena and Kate meeting never would be possible if it weren't for all of these extensions of the MCU and what it used to be. And like knowing that it's all Stan Lee's dream is what keeps me going and interested in this. With that movie specifically, I just feel like they're trying to do too much, and I know that Marvel can still do solo films and team up films really well. They proved that last year with Shang-Chi as a great origin solo movie, and they proved it to me with Spider-Man No Way Home, which I know is a little bit of a different situation, but whatever. They proved that they can do this kind of stuff, and so I'm not like I'll be the first one to say I was wrong, but I can't lie to you and say I'm not a little nervous for it. The last one that I have is that I'm actually really not a big fan of comic accurate costumes. And what I mean by this is like, I love the fact that the MCU from its origins has tried to be something different than the comics. It said we will take inspiration from here. Obviously, some of the storylines are taken from the comics. Obviously, there's stuff you can point back to in the comics, and it's like, this is a reference, and I love that. But I feel like when you get so on the nose about what those references are, i.e. a visual reference of a costume that looks identical to the one in the comics, it's not as fun. And so, like, for example, a perfect example of this is Miss Marvel, the upcoming series. I'm so excited for it. She has like an original costume that is kind of like handmade and for herself, which is something that like I love because it has a little cutesy element to it. It reminds us that she's a young girl and all of these different things. And then they have the comic book accurate version that obviously the show is leading up to, and like her costume is very simplistic, and I get that there's not too many ways to maybe reinterpret that, or people would be like, well, in the comic blah 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 number it's specifically denoted that this is a cashmere scarf that she wears, but actually in the show they used felt. That's not what I'm talking about. And people are also going to call me out for saying like Captain America's suit in Avengers is literally exactly like what it is in the comics, and I get it. I just sort of like the interpretation and the costume design. I still think, and I'm not taking this away from the talented costume designers that work for Marvel. I think they do a fantastic job on pretty much everything. I just had to state that like I'm not the biggest fan of being like, it's so comic book accurate, because it's like the MCU is not the comics, you know? And that is an unpopular opinion just because it kind of sounds kind of beefy coming from my mouth. So it had to be included here. That, though, is going to be it for this unpopular opinion. Hopefully that was not too many unpopular opinions to cause you to unsubscribe. If you agreed with any of them, though, you could consider hitting the subscribe button. See that little transition there? Turn that little red button down there gray, and be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Both those things would greatly help myself and the channel out as we head towards 3,000 subscribers, which is crazy. Crazy, guys. This time last year, I don't even think I was at 300 subscribers. So that is crazy stuff. Thank you so much for watching this video. I so appreciate you listening to me complain, basically. I hope you have an absolutely amazing day or night, whenever you're going to watch this, and I will see you in my very next video. Bye, y'all.